Beautiful morning this morning. Minus 25. Just a little bit of snow. But the best thing is it's not windy. So that's quite the treat. Just going to make it down to the honey house this morning. I haven't been into the winter shed for quite a while. Just been listening for the fans to make sure the fans are still going, but I haven't actually cracked that door for, I can't remember the last time I was in there. So I just want to take a quick sweep around the shed just to see how much drops on the floor and just to take a peek and see my babies. So the fans are on idle. There's not much air movement coming through. The one fan's off, this one's off. This one is off idle. So it must be 4 or 5 degrees in there. If that's just off idle, I bet you it's about 5. So we'll go take a peek. In the shed this year, I stacked the rows a little bit tighter than I usually do, just to be able to fit all the bees in. So what I did is I rode the singles as wide as my broom brush, so I can easily sweep down the aisles. But then with my nukes, I rode them a little bit tighter just to be able to get them in all one row. So I had Carrie cut this broom, make it down these aisles so we could sweep these bees. These girls don't like the white light. So I just make their way down, see all the dead bees. Wakey wakey. Definitely a lot of bees in this shed. So I've kind of woken the shed up. I can kind of hear this low roar. I've swept 4 or 5 rows, just down to my last one here. And it's kind of stirred the shed up a little bit. But there's a shit ton of bees in these boxes. Nothing wrong with that. There's one wheelbarrow full of dead bees. Another little pile to sweep up. So I'm not overly concerned. Most of these are probably like some of the old summer bees that are drifting off. I used to, not get upset, but I used to hate sweeping the shed of old bees that die off on the floor. Because my babies are dying, right? But I've been thinking about this with a different line of thought recently. To me, it doesn't make any sense. Like these, not the summer bees that drift off. Those are bees that just simply timed out. But as we go forward here, I'm going to continue sweeping dead bees off the floor. And it never made any sense to me. I mean, it just didn't seem logical for these bees that set themselves up for winter to simply drift off into the dark and die very quietly and slowly on the floor. I mean, it'd be much the same outside, it's just they're flying off into the snow. And it didn't seem like, what's the point of that? These bees have set themselves up to, as winter bees, to winter, and they just simply die off halfway through the winter. There has to be some type of purpose for them. So I've come to start to think these bees, when they drift off, they actually have a purpose. They have a function, and they're carrying out normal colony function through the winter. And they're not just simply drifting off and dying without providing any type of benefit to the colony, to the wintering colony. I bet you those bees are exhausting themselves with brood rearing. Oh, there's an entrance we got to take off. They exhaust themselves with brood rearing. There's not a lot of winter brooding, especially in the shed here, but it is proven that there's just a little bit. And I bet you those bees are just simply exhausting themselves and timing themselves out through the winter, but contributing to new bees within that nest. So that little bit of brood that's going on inside, that little bit of patch of brood, there has to be some kind of resource passed along from the bees themselves to establish that brood. And when they do so, they time themselves out and then they drift off and die onto the floor. And that train of thought is kind of, making sense to me. Because these colonies, they'll go into winter of this size, and I'll come back in March and it'll be exactly the same size. And yet I've been sweeping dead bees off the floor all winter. So I'll sweep those dead bees off the floor, but they are probably brooding just a little bit inside just to maintain that attrition throughout the winter. And that colony attrition is what they continually fight themselves, just to try to maintain themselves, to keep them going through winter. So they have all the honey inside, they have pollen reserves inside, but also these bees themselves hold a very valuable resource of proteins and fats within their bodies. And that's what they pass on to the next generation to be able to, maintain brooding, continue the cycle of life.